seems a little sleepy in the room. It's like, I don't know, it's a light, something else is going on, but hopefully you'll be energized at the end of this. So we're here to talk about the past, the present, and the future of SaaS buying, right? So before we get into that, I'll give you a quick introduction about me. I'm Sid. I'm the co-founder and CEO of SpendFlow. We're an all-in-one SaaS buying and management solution. So prior to starting SpendFlow, I used to run BizOps for a bunch of high-growth startups, and I'm also a recovering banker. I'm still recovering. This leather jacket is it's one step closer to me not wearing a suit anymore. Want to get to know who's in the room today, right? Who here works in finance? Got it. Who here works in sales? Got it. Who here works in marketing, maybe? Any founders in the room as well? Perfect. Did I miss anyone out? That's fine. Okay, got it. Makes sense. So that's a great mix. It's going to be relevant to all of you, and we can always get specific with questions right after. So bear with me till then. So what really happened? I'm just going to run a quick exercise now. I know you guys are a little bit spread out. This requires you to be next to someone. But what I'm going to ask you is introduce yourself to the person on your right? Quickly in 30 seconds, right? And recommend one product, right? It can be any product. For example, hi, I'm Sid. The last product that I really want to recommend is a Gentle Monster sunglasses, which I really like for some reason, right? So those are the sunglasses that I really recommend. It can be any product. Just turn to the person on your right, introduce yourself, and recommend any product. So let me take you back to a time when I actually had hair, right? So this is a couple of years ago. I was at a high growth company. I was responsible for buying and renewing 150 different SaaS tools, etc. I didn't even know this. It was really hindsight in 2020. We had 8 different stakeholders in the buying and renewal of your SaaS tools. Right? We had an individual who wanted the tool, the department head, finance, IT, InfoSec, legal, procurement, and the sales guy on the other end, right? The problem is all 8 of them don't even know that they're part of a process. It happens 10 times a month because you have 150 tools. That's 10 renewals on average every single month, right? And I had no idea what to pay, and I had no idea how to go through this process. So invariably, I ended up paying too much, and I ended up buying too much. And that's when my CFO was breathing down my neck. It's half the reason why I lost my hair as well, right at that point. And you won't believe it, I want to get an understanding, who here has experienced this pain maybe on a quarterly basis, right? There are some folks, yeah, see? And what really happened, that was the thesis behind SpendFlow, right? That was our origin story. That's why we started it, because we wanted one single place for you to actually buy and manage your SaaS. And so over the last couple of years, our team's done over 10,000 different SaaS transactions. We have over 10,000 different SaaS buyers on the platform across 6 different continents, right? So along the way, what we've learned is that we know what SaaS buyers are looking for, we know what SaaS buyers want, and we also know how SaaS buying behavior is changing. These are the insights that we really want to share with you today. And this leads to what's happening in the present, right? So as a SaaS buyer, what am I experiencing today, right? Anyone within your organization, and you individually, what are you experiencing right now? The first thing is the average number of SaaS tools that a company inside SpendFlow uses is 110, right? And that number is still increasing year on year. So as a buyer, I'm still overwhelmed with which tool to buy because the average number of competitors for every SaaS tool out there is 9, right? So it's really hard to stand out in the market as a seller, and really hard to make a decision as a buyer because there's so many good tools out there. And this is leading me to take more time to make a decision. It's leading to longer sales cycles, longer buying cycles, and it just causes a whole lot of pain, right? Because you need to go through 8 different folks to do this. And, sorry. Awesome. Great, so as a business leader, and as a budget owner, all I care about is being within my budget, right? And now, who who's been hit with a surprise invoice at the end of the month with some overage bill that they hit from some, like a Datadog or a Snowflake or anything else, right? So, yeah, like who here got hit with it? Any hands over here? Right there. So, see, a lot of you got hit with it, right? And it's a surprise. It's a surprise that we don't want as a budget owner. No SaaS buyer really wants a surprise at the end of the month. And that's causing a lot of anxiety to me as a buyer to adopt a bunch of usage-based tools. And it's also making it really hard for finance leaders and procurement leaders to control the spend within the company, right? So why is it happening? Just 5 years ago, only 22% of SaaS tools were actually usage-based pricing. They're actually deploying usage-based pricing. Now it's actually 44% of SaaS tools deploy usage-based pricing, right? And with that increase, it's great, right? It's really easy to adopt, really easy to use, but it causes a bunch of anxiety still, right? Sorry, give me a minute. Got it. So we run like an annual SaaS buying survey where we survey over 150 to 200 different organizations. What we really learned was 40% of the organizations that we surveyed were had 5 different departments in the buying and renewal of SaaS, right? At least 40%, right? So what does that mean? CFOs and procurement leaders used to look like the referee. They had to blow the whistle at the end of the transaction saying, hey, we can't do this. We don't have budget for this. We need to hold on this, right? And sometimes it just passes through. But now, that's changing. CFOs and procurement leaders are becoming a lot more proactive. And what that means is they're becoming a point guard in this process. So as a buyer, you need to get them involved a lot sooner in the process, just so that they know that's coming. And as a seller, you better get them involved before as well, right? And that's evolving in the last couple of quarters. Yep. I'm guessing we're all facing this in some way or form, that buying cycles and sales cycles are also getting longer and longer. And the reason why this is happening is we've seen in the last 3 quarters, we saw a 22% increase in the sales cycles, essentially buying cycles as well, right? The average time to procure a new tool inside a Spendflow platform is 52 days, right? Outside the platform is 92 right now. And that used to only be 40 days last year, right? That number has actually increased by another 10 to 12 days in the last couple of quarters. Renewals are also taking longer. Renewal inside the platform is taking 62 days today. It used to be close to 30 days the last couple of quarters ago. And the reason why renewals are taking longer is because, as a buyer, I need to justify that spend to my CFO, to my procurement leader. And I need my vendors to coach me on how to do that. That's what they're looking for, because they're really confused on what to decide, even during the renewal. But it's not all doom and gloom, right? SaaS is still growing, and it's growing really fast, especially for in the last couple of years, right? When we surveyed a bunch of folks, it was over 40% of the users were spending more than $1 million on their SaaS spend. Compared to 2 years ago, it was only like 28%. So the amount of SaaS spend that's actually growing inside these organizations is quite a lot, right? So what does that mean for the future of SaaS buying, right? Now, before I kickstart, you all got recommended a particular product. With a show of hands, would you go and research more about it right now? Whatever product you got recommended, who would want to go look into it a little bit more?
Already did.
Right. So, yeah. That's what's actually happening, right? That's what the future of SaaS buying is actually looking like. Because your customers become your biggest influencers, more and more buyers are looking at their industry peers and recommendations from their industry peers on what they want to buy. And that's how SaaS vendors can actually stand out, and that's how buyers actually will buy going forward. What does that mean? As a vendor, you need not only provide exceptional service, but you also need to equip your customers with the right tools to become an influencer, right? And as a buyer, you need to be a part of these communities where you can actually talk to your peers, right? And you're all part of this community here as well. And this is happening a lot more, and we're seeing this a lot more as well. The second is contracting becomes extremely flexible. Buyers actually want to buy more SaaS. They want to use whatever they want. They want to actually go ahead and buy it, use it, whatever they want to do with it, right? But they can't go through it because the contracting process is still really tedious. The payment terms are still really tedious. You don't have cancellations. There's a bunch of things that just don't work with the way that contracting is set up today. So they actually want to go ahead and buy this. And it gives vendors a chance to build trust with their customers before signing up to longer term agreements. And gives finance and procurement leaders a little bit more flexibility on not getting into these longer term agreements and longer term obligations as well. Right? That's what we think will happen moving forward. And the last, we also believe that buying cycles will shorten to a couple of days. People will be buying much quicker and renewing much quicker as well. And the reason why we think this will happen is increasingly buyers are looking for a faster, leaner, and a cleaner way to actually buy and rent their SaaS. And the reason why that works is we're seeing buying behavior inside all the marketplaces today. The AWS marketplace, the Azure marketplace, GCP marketplace. They're also buying from value-added resellers, also buying platforms like us. Buyers increasingly want to be able to buy from one single place, right? And that implies that your sales cycles actually shorten over a period of time, and buyers are actually willing to go through these transactions much quicker because security standards are a little bit more set, contracting is a little bit more flexible. And what that means for a vendor is that you need to be where your buyers are today. But last but not least, if you need to take away 3 things from this, one is SaaS is still growing. It's not going to go away. It's still growing at an incredible pace. Buyers still want to talk to an influencer before they make a decision, right? So you as a buyer become part of these communities where your peers are already are. And as a seller, equip your customers to become your influencers. The second thing is, if you're part of the contracting process and you have control over it, make it as flexible as you can. Because the more flexible you can make the process, the better chances of you building trust with your customers as well. Because they don't want to deal with 150 or 200 different contracts at a company of 100 people, right? It's still really complicated. And 3, be where your buyers are. Be it third-party marketplaces, value-added resellers, buying platforms. Customers are increasingly choosing to buy from one single place. I'll leave you with the last thought, right? Which is, as an industry, we've been obsessed with how SaaS is sold, but we've never worried about how SaaS has actually been bought. And I think that's what the focus will become in the next couple of years. And thank you all for coming. I'm here to answer any questions. Please let me know right now. Thank you. Please. Yeah.
And that's disadvantages and also kind of if you don't like it, while you are doing the implementation, and show that out.
Yeah.
So plug in and plug out that any software SaaS models are easy to plug in, plug out. Those stuff is really good.
Yeah.
I just started having something from those kind of tools, which is quite easy, user-friendly, plug in, plug out, and that kind of stuff they can extend to the customer.
Yeah. It's a very valid point. But also the funny part is that finance leaders love ARR, right? So you need that booking for the entire year, and we as an industry are addicted to that booking value, right? We're addicted to the annual upfront payments. We're addicted to the annual contracts. So I think there has to be a different way to maybe showcase that to the board, to investors, to stakeholders, that hey, this isn't actually churn, this is just a trial, this is a POC, something, right? It's a way for us to build trust in that community. But there's a long way to go in order to get there as well. Yeah.
Today, every tool is like the ability that
Yeah.
maybe once you like to say, well, that tool is not really the features or other tools.
Exactly. It's evolving at it's an immense pace. Buyer remorse is real. Like once you buy the tool, you're like, oh shit, I don't want this. It's very real. We have the number of, I don't know, like I spend a lot of time on Reddit, unfortunately. So, and the number of times you can hear, and the number of SaaS company origin stories that arrive from Reddit where some founder went and read something about this particular SaaS tool and it was really bad and he said, let me go solve this, and then he builds a $1 billion company. I've heard that story so many times. It's actually true. If you go to Reddit, you hear so many stories about bad implementations, bad like customer support, whatever it might be, right? And that's where buyer remorse actually comes. Reddit is the best place to safely see it and work with that. Any other questions? All right.
How often do you see, because we're listening to startups here, like how often do you see people just change platforms and things like
Yeah.
platform? How often do you see that?
So obviously there's this bunch of standard tooling which doesn't get switched that often. But what we see is, especially in a high growth company, right? Like you might be a Series A company today, and like 18 months from now, you're a Series B company. You might have started off with HubSpot, and got to like transition into Salesforce someday, right? And you have to start off with like Apollo.io. You got to go to Zoom Info. You got to start off with something and move. And what we're seeing is in startups, specifically, you start off as an SMB customer, and as you transition and as you grow, your tool stack actually changes. So we're seeing like every 18 months, there is a little bit of a refresh that happens in your tool stack, right? And crucial ones like, hey, as long as you can stay in QuickBooks, that's great, but there will be a time that you need to move to NetSuite, right? And that we see that happening quite a lot. And then, and those are for like larger spends. I would say like more than $40,000 or so, right? I'd say $40,000 to $50,000. Anything that's less than $30,000 or $20,000, what we see is there's a pretty high amount of switching that's happening in that space. Because, like you said, it's plug and play, it's easy to try, but if they do prove value there, customers are actually willing to invest more and more. We actually have like a sentiment map, right? It gives you like where you need to go and reinvest in your SaaS tools, where you need to go start looking at it, saying, hey, you're spending too much, your internal customers don't just like it, right? So we do see that, but it's a transition, it's a journey. And every journey, every department, as they become more mature, their SaaS tools actually mature as well, as they scale.
Which SaaS tool has unbiased comparative process?
We want to be that, but we're not there yet, right? Like in all honesty, it's not. It's a really hard problem, primarily because you're not comparing apples to apples, right? So there's a lot of nuance. There's a lot of nuance in what feature, what it does for the person, the size of the organization, the industry you're serving. There's a lot of nuance. It's a tricky problem, and that's why we want to go and solve it. Sorry, please go ahead.
What do you see currently in terms of contract negotiation that buyers have in terms of leverage that may be different than a year ago?
Funny enough, the biggest one they see is, hey, I've downsized, and that's about it, right? Like in all honesty, they just say, hey, I'm downsized, right? They've gone through a RIF, they've gone through some form of downsizing, and we're seeing these asks come in the middle of the contract. That's the thing that's changing. And the vendors that are supportive of them at this particular stage, they tend to be really grateful, right? And then there are obviously some vendors who might not be supportive. It doesn't make business sense for them, right? And we see that going on. I was having dinner with a public company CFO a couple of weeks ago, and he said, "Hey man, in one way, I'm glad that like a recession did happen, right? Like everybody's worried about that in us. I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but it's like in one way, I was going to go to all my vendors and say, there's a recession, cut your spend by 40%. That's what I do as a CFO. That's the value that I bring to the table. That I don't think, what can I do? If my business is not making money, I'm not going to pay someone just because of that, right? So I think those annual contracts are becoming a little bit trickier to hold up because they've been signed at a time when glory days versus now not so much, right? Any other questions, folks?
Do you integrate any analysts first when you're talking about the objectives?
Yeah, that's why we don't. So, I mean, it's also like, okay, some of our customers do use a bunch of analyst firms and things, but we don't have a point of view. We provide unbiased data in terms of like, hey, what's the market share of this particular tool? What's the average usage of this particular tool? What's the average sentiment? What's the average spend? It's anonymized data that maybe it's like you might not be able to find anywhere else, but we don't come out with a market map and say, hey, this is what the market looks like and you need to go take it, right? Because the market is honestly really big, so it's hard for us to take a point of view on that, and we don't necessarily want to because then our customers will be like, hey, I think you guys are shilling this in some way or form, right? We don't want to take a bias of that.
Okay, what are some of the ways you see companies shorten the contract licensing part? I mean, with the data privacy and data sovereignty, every customer seems to want to have their own way of saying things. So the contract just takes a long time to negotiate with the same issue.
Yeah, tell me about it. We're going through this, like, I've been on a 6-month sales cycle with somebody right now, and finally I hope it gets closed this week. But it depends on, you want to get ahead of it. Like what I mean, this is a mistake that we made as well, and mistake a lot of folks do, is ask the buyer what your InfoSec or what your security team really needs upfront. Like as soon as they say send the contract, send all the other information, overload them with information, honestly. Just give them everything and anything that you could ever think of, put it in like a drive and then send it out to them. Right, and then put a checklist of the things that you sent and say, hey, all of this is available for you, we're really secure. Like overwhelming them with information upfront in that sales cycle, and it gives buyer a confidence that you actually know what you're talking about because you're literally giving him a checklist with all the documents attached to the checklist. Right, and then what happens is, because it's a checklist, security is going to look at it and say, oh, he has a checklist, I just use his. Because nobody in security wants to do this. Right? They want to go deal with some other things. They don't want to deal with this. They just want to like sign off on it, right? In all honesty, because they have other things to deal with.
They just have their own way that they want to.
Well, they do, but if you're getting proactive with it, in enterprise, yes, for sure. But in the mid-market, they're dealing with other things. Right? In the mid-market, they're dealing with other pieces, which is more critical for them. But just be proactive with that approach, even in the enterprise, I guess. So we see this happen when if they send their security questionnaires a lot quicker, then they don't get stuck in that process after the contract negotiation is done. Right? 3 weeks after the contract negotiation is done, they're stuck in security review, right? That's not a great place to be as a buyer as well as a seller. Perfect. I'll be hanging around here, so folks, if you have any questions, let me know. Happy to answer. Thank you so much.